I'm going to continue my line of questioning that I started with General Mahoney to you, just again on the, we've already touched on it a lot, but it's okay to, I want to hear from all the services. The negative impact on the CR, the budget flexibility that you would want or request as part of this year's NDAA, and then any lessons learned on the good news that we're all starting to see, I think, across the services on recruiting and to kind of, make sure we're learning across services on that, because I don't think it got enough press, but if you have an all-volunteer force and we're hitting a recruiting crisis of tens of thousands of Americans who we were short, that's an existential threat to our military. Fortunately, it looks like we're beyond that, but we need to embed the lessons learned from all the services on how we got out of that danger zone. So, General, to you on those three questions.
Senator, as far as the CR, we've canvassed pretty much all the negative things. I'd just like to hammer down on one. We talked about anomalies and flexibility. In order to move between appropriations or accounts, we also need to be mindful of what the top line is. If there is only so much top line from which to flex or to move, we're going to rob from one account to pay for another. Examples might be inflation that outpaces the plus up, pay raises that were not planned for or budgeted but are must-pay bills. That money will come from somewhere. And non-budgeted contingencies that we pay out of our own primarily O&M accounts will have to be accounted for somewhere in the rules of that continuing resolution. A knock-on effect specific to the Marine Corps is if, and it's already been touched on by Admiral Kilby, if ship maintenance or shipbuilding or procurement or anything that touches amphibious shipping, it will have a knock-on effect to the Marine Corps, as I spoke about with Senator Hirono earlier. As far as flexibility goes, I would reference the Lord Hale study on PPB reform, and I'll just bring up three things that come to mind immediately. I think they have 16 recommendations in there, which are all really good. Multi-year availability of one-year accounts so that you are not forced into making bad decisions at the end of the year and buying things that you really don't need, but have a period of availability to where you can make better executive and managerial decisions against that appropriation. Greater transfer authority so that we can move between appropriations or move between sub-activity groups in order to solve a problem early so that we don't have to come to Congress for an above-threshold massive reprogramming late in the year that may be late to need or not solve the problem. And lastly, and I'll let it go, is multi-year colorless appropriations to have flexibility within a portfolio to strengthen where you're weak and move money around to make sure that you can get your objectives attained within an account. So multi-year availability, greater transfer authority, and multi-year colorless appropriation. And we did the last one, and if you think of MRAP and you think of JATO back in the day, that worked pretty well to get things done at an accelerated pace. I'm running on here, but recruiting. For us, three things. We have a brand that we will not back off from. We believe that that brand is attractive. We believe it is a magnet to a wide demographic of young Americans who will prove themselves physically, mentally, and morally qualified. We will not back off of the standard, and counterintuitively, you maintain a standard at a high level, that attracts people who want to perform to that standard.
That's a great lesson, and I think we have to always keep that in mind. All the services, no matter what our recruiting challenges are, it is counterintuitive, but it works. So thank you for that.
And lastly, Senator, I already talked about it in detail, and that is our recruiting force. A breed apart, who are hand-screened, selected, incentivized, promoted, and as I said, when they get back in the fleet, as you know, they're some of the best staff NCOs and officers we have, and they become Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps and Commandant in the Marine Corps.
Real quick, General Gutline, can you just hit on these three questions? try to be concise. I'm going over my time here. I want to be respectful to my colleagues, but I do want to get through this issue of CR, budget flexibilities, and recruiting.
Yes, Chairman, I can go pretty quick. From a CR, it's a huge challenge. It's very, very inefficient. It does impact us, especially because we are the smallest force with the smallest budget. So any churn in our budget is a huge hit to us. As far as what we would ask for flexibilities, I agree with the rest of the staff, new starts. We are seeing an enormous amount of threats emerging every single year, and it is very hard to get after those threats when you have to wait 2 to 4 years to get the budget to get after those threats. So anything you can do, budget flexibility for New Start Authority. PE consolidation, the ability to move money between programs would be hugely beneficial. And then the multi-year procurement, multi-year execution authority that General Mahoney talked about. As far as recruiting and retention, we've actually got a much easier problem because we have a much smaller force. But we are seeing two volunteers for every recruit that we take into the United States Space Force. So we're able to be very, very, very selective for high quality. 15%, almost nearly 15% of our recruits have some college level of education, to include all the way up to masters and PhDs. Our recruiting objectives were met the last 4 years in a row, 104% for our enlisted, 101% for our officers, and we're looking at continuing growth in the future, and our retention rate has been in excess of 98%.
Wow, great. That's great news. Great job, General.